who's going to be able to hold NATO together like me? Who's going to be able to be in a position where I'm able to keep the Pacific Basin in a position where we're at least checkmating China now? Who's going to do that? Who has that reach? Who knows all these? We're going to have, I guess, a good way to judge me is you're going to have now the NATO conference here in the United States next week. Come listen.
President Biden facing his next big test this week when dozens of world leaders gather in D.C. for the 75th NATO Anniversary Summit, and his mental health and fitness for office becomes a critical focus on the world stage. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg joins us now. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for joining us. This has been a topic in the United States for at least the last week, for some for the last few years. Does President Biden have the mental acuity to be, in his own words in that interview, the leader of the world, but especially to lead NATO in many ways with so much going on around the world?
Well, I will not be part of a domestic U.S. debate, but what I can say is that I just had a couple of weeks ago a good and productive meeting with President Biden in the Oval Office, and that we this week will make important decisions at the NATO summit in Washington on deterrence, defense, on Ukraine, and also to work more closely with our Asia-Pacific partners to address the threats and challenges posed by China. And of course, all of these decisions that we'll take this week would not have been possible without U.S. leadership. So I look forward to an important summit in Washington this week.
I understand you don't want to get into partisan politics. We understand that completely. We are worried, though, about the national security of the U.S. and the world. We have what's going on in Ukraine and other places, NATO, big part of that. In your experience, you've dealt with President Biden for many years. Have you seen any sort of cognitive decline whatsoever?
If I start to answer questions like that, I will be dragged into a U.S. internal debate. And the reason why NATO is the most successful alliance in history is that we have stayed out of domestic partisan issues. And I aim to continue to do so. There were elections in the UK just a couple of days ago, France today, and NATO is not part of those domestic debates. The big thing is that we are making a lot of progress together. For instance, on defense spending, European allies are now spending record high on defense. 23 allies are spending more than 2%, which is a NATO guideline on defense. That is huge progress. Demonstrate that US is not carrying the burden alone, but European allies and Canada are really stepping up when it comes to burden sharing within the alliance.
Absolutely. And during President Biden's tenure, Russia has invaded Ukraine, and NATO has stepped up in many ways across the board to support Ukraine in this war. I know you have a summit this week. What will be the topic, the top of the agenda for the summit this week in D.C.?
It will be Ukraine and the importance of supporting Ukraine, and not least because what happens in Ukraine is not only about Ukraine and Europe, it's also about China and Asia, because we see how Iran, North Korea and China are supporting Russia's illegal war against Ukraine. So if President Putin wins in Ukraine, it will not only embolden President Putin, it will also embolden President Xi and demonstrate how authoritarian leaders in Beijing or Moscow will get their way when they use military force. So therefore it's in our security interest to support Ukraine. It's not charity, it's in our interest to provide support to Ukraine.
One of the biggest issues on Ukraine in debate in the United States is whether or not it should be added as a NATO country. Do you expect that to be on as a topic of discussion, and do you feel like Ukraine will be added as a NATO country soon?
Membership for Ukraine will be an issue, but I don't expect that there will be issued an invitation, but we will help to ensure that Ukraine can move closer to membership by providing training, equipment to ensure that the Ukraine armed forces move towards meeting NATO standards, but not a decision on membership.
Mr. Secretary General, thank you so much for joining us and answering these questions. As Americans, we're really concerned about the security of the world, and I know that NATO plays a big part of that. So thank you very much for your work as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.